Welcome to Wagons of Steel. It's a party and everyone's invited. This week, the end of this week, will be Halloween, which means it's 9 years since I quit drinking. Which is a huge deal for me because, much as I hate to say it, I'm an alcoholic. And I can't be trusted to drink at all. I mean, if you want me to drink every beer in the house, well, I guess that's what you can trust me to do. I haven't tested that out in a while. A couple of years ago, a friend of mine told me, Chris, you're really good at quitting stuff. And, to be called a good quitter is pretty much only applicable if you're talking about quitting stuff that's bad for you. So I quit cigarettes when I was 29, many years ago. And I quit alcohol 9 years ago. And I quit smoking pot like 5 years ago. And, this is mostly about cars and art and drag racing. So it's kind of weird to make a video about quitting stuff because this isn't really a quitting stuff kind of YouTube channel, I guess. But I decided it was if my mission, if my journey helps anyone who needs to quit or to think about it, then I guess it's a good thing. And I was encouraged by a bunch of my friends. So here you go. Here's how Chris quit drinking and what the pluses and minuses of it. And then some other time I'll talk about quitting smoking cigarettes and quitting weed. I started drinking when I was young, like most people do. I guess I was probably 15 or something like that. I grew up in Florida, and when I was growing up in Florida, the drinking age was 18. And, I always used to say that, if you're allowed to go off and fight in a war and vote and all that other stuff, then you should be able to drink. And I guess theoretically that makes sense, but now having been on both sides of it, I realize that 18-year-olds, it's not so much that they shouldn't drink, although that's another debate. But I think what it is 18-year-olds aren't smart enough to know that you shouldn't give alcohol to 16-year-olds, and that 18-year-olds look like 16-year-olds, so that if you're selling alcohol, it's much harder to deal with not giving alcohol to people who are too young if the drinking age is 18, because 18-year-olds look so young. I mean, that's because I'm an old man now, but it makes sense to me more now than ever before. Just like, when you're a kid, it's like, why won't that guy buy alcohol for me? But then when you're an adult, you're like, oh my God, no, I'd never buy alcohol for a kid. I mean, what if the kid goes off and gets in an accident or does something stupid? So anyways, I started drinking when I was a teenager in Florida. And, some of my earliest memories are, my family lived on the south side of St. Petersburg, and which put us really close to black neighborhoods, because in Florida, unfortunately, a lot of it, kind of to this day, black people live in one place and white people live in another place, and the two rarely meet. I was an exception. I was not raised as a racist like many white people in Florida are, and black people, and I guess Florida doesn't mix well with each other. Black people don't hang out with white people don't hang out with Mexican people don't hang out with Cuban people. They all hate each other. It's like there's no melting pot going on there. So, sorry. Anyways, my brother and I would pedal our bicycles to a gas station in the black neighborhood, and those guys were so amazed that a couple of white boys like us would come to their neighborhood at all, that they gladly sold us as much Mickey's malt liquor as we wanted. So that was where I first started drinking, was Mickey's malt liquor. Back then, they had an ad campaign that said "Pull ring, throw a party," and they had these little barrel-shaped bottles, and you pull the ring, and this top would split into this horrendously sharp thing, and you'd have a big mouth bottle that you just ram. And unlike most of my friends, alcohol really never made me sick. Throughout my 30-year drinking career, I think it only made me physically ill twice. I mean, if you don't count the hangovers, which I had many of. So anyways, I started off doing that on weekends, and then I didn't even smoke pot back then. I smoked cigarettes because back when I was a kid, they didn't care if kids smoked cigarettes. They just cared if you made a mess. So smoke over there and use the ashtray. And so I did a lot of drinking then, but mostly on weekends and stuff, and then just, you know, kept on going. And I can't remember a line that I crossed where all of a sudden I knew I was an alcoholic, but I remember telling my mom when I was 18, it was my grandmother's birthday, and it was an important one. It was like her 70th or 65th. I can't remember which one it was. But my mom hosted a party at our house, and we had just tons of my grandmother's relatives flew in, and she's from Alabama, so it's a bunch of Southern people, and they all stayed in hotels around, and it was just a huge party. And I just remember them bringing, they needed a hand truck to bring in all the bourbon that they had, like 3 cases of bourbon. And I mean, it was a lot of people, but 3 cases of bourbon, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of bourbon. And just hanging out with all these people, and, you know, it's like, they were obviously alcoholics. I mean, you drink bourbon all day. I mean, if you have to travel a hand truck of bourbon, I don't think you need an AA meeting to know that you have a drinking thing going. And so I remember telling my mom, I'm an alcoholic, because, you know, it's just, I'm come from these people, and that's what I am. And she said, no, you're not an alcoholic. And, you know, I'm not going to push the issue. I'm whatever. So I kept going and going, and, you know, I went to college in New York City and drank a lot there. New York City, the drinking age has always been 21, but all you have to do is, you know, put your money on the counter, and they'll give you something to drink there. And if you don't get it there, you go across the street. Then I went to Vermont to school for a year, and anybody who lives in Vermont will tell you it's pretty. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify it or insult anybody, but from my experience in Vermont, either you don't drink or you're an alcoholic, and there's really not much in between, because it's so dark and so cold for a lot of the year. And, you know, it's just one of those places where people deal with their issues by getting hammered. I mean, it's like there's a huge opiate problem there. And they'll do whatever they can. And so anyways, I was on the alcoholic side, and we all just got completely shit-faced all the time. And man, I've had some of my most legendary hangovers there. And what else? What happened there? Pretty much, you know, in retrospect, I could say that whole every day has a hangover kind of feel to it. Really, it just puts a bad flavor to stuff. And Vermont was where I decided I was done with going to college for a while, and that was what caused me eventually to come out here, to move to the West Coast. So I was thinking of the story the other day. It's funny. I actually made the decision to move out west in a parking lot on the beach in St. Petersburg, Florida. At 10 in the morning when I was drunk, drinking beer with a friend. I have made some of the best decisions in my life, and some of the worst, under the influence of alcohol or drugs. It's I guess when you're drunk all the time, you pretty much do everything you do when you're you know, I guess that's how that works, right? But anyways, I made that decision then, and that was a good decision. So my aunt had always told me, if you ever need to do something new, come on out to Vashon Island, Washington, and I'll give you a place to stay and a job. So I did. We packed up the car and headed west with everything in a 1974 Toyota Celica GT, which stands for Get Out of Town. Oh, we had a fantastic road trip across the country. I think that was the first time I drove east-west. Done it a bunch of times. Recommend it. Hopefully someday I'll make a video about driving across the country, because it's a lot of fun. But I digress. Came out here and lived with my aunt and worked for her for a year or two. And then she encouraged me to go to art school in the Bay Area, which I did. And I lived in Berkeley for a while, and eventually had a studio in Oakland. Art school, I remember my figure drawing teacher had, it was like no secret that he had whiskey in his coffee, and he always acted hammered, and everything was a party, and it's like, it's kind of the image of the artist to be messed up all the time. Gosh. And I was no exception. And they had, we would rate the art openings on how good the wine was, and, lots of box wine. Ugh, I don't recommend that. And that was where I went back to my roots. I started drinking malt liquor again. Specifically, King Cobra malt liquor. Don't leave home without it. We drank so much of this crap. Oh my God. The 7-Eleven down the street from my studio, they stopped carrying it when we moved away. I don't know. No comment. So we drank tons of malt liquor there, and I started living with some friends of mine, all of whom are either dead or quit, or just cut way back. Started drinking in the morning again, which is just what everybody did. Now, drinking King Cobra malt liquor in the morning is that's got to be the definition of a drinking problem, right? I mean, Old English is one thing, but King Cobra, no, any malt liquor in the morning, I guess, and pretty much any alcohol in the morning it's a red flag. That as a drinker, it's like, you don't really like being told about that kind of stuff, and I don't tell people about it. It's like figure. There's a few other ones. Like I saw some show on TV about English alcoholism, and they were like, when they ask people what their drink of choice is, and if it's cider or malt liquor, the doctors, if they just check off a little box, they're not going to say anything. It's like, yeah, okay, we know what you are. You're going to be getting a new liver soon. But anyways, I carried on drinking tons of malt liquor all day long down there, and then that was really where I think I started to realize that alcohol was a problem. I've always organized my life in a way that it's okay to do stuff like drink all day, because I kind of, I'm self-employed. I'm my own boss. My boss isn't going to bitch at me for drinking in the morning, because he's drinking too. And I guess I'm a pretty smart guy, and I know how to organize stuff so that I can do that. I write lists, and there's all kinds of. It's all a bunch of baloney, really. Honestly, it's like, if you got a drinking problem, you got a drinking problem. You can sugarcoat it to yourself all day long, but eventually you're going to have to admit it, or whatever. And so I stumbled through my time in Oakland, and then I came up here again, and with my wife, and or my soon-to-be wife, and I worked for a plumber for a while, for a couple of years, and then I went back to full-time self-employment and, started drag racing and all this other stuff. Life goes on. Had a couple of kids, and all the time, I retired from malt liquor, and I was drinking really good beer again. And I like, everybody's got their own personal taste, but if I'm drinking beer, I like the beer that is, I like IPA. I like really strong, good beer. When I was blowing smoke up my own ass, I would tell myself that I liked that beer because it was good for you. It's not made out of crap. But, I've seen videos of the Budweiser factory, and, those guys, that's good ingredients. They're not using any crap. It's all a matter of, what you like or what you don't like. And it's alcohol. That's what gets you going. And, doesn't matter if they make it at the Budweiser factory or in Munich. So every year, my beer of choice, pretty much, I liked them all, but I liked Sierra Nevada a lot. And every year they put out a celebration ale, and that beer tasted so good. It was like it tastes like their pale ale, which is their mild beer, but it's a couple points stronger, and it just got this horrendous hangover to it. But it's one of those beers that I like so much. And I've seen other people with this. You drink it again anyways the next day. Like some stuff, everybody's got a story about drinking Cuervo Gold tequila when they're a kid. I guess, I don't know, maybe everybody does. All my alcoholic buddies do. And you drink a bunch of Cuervo, and once in a while, Cuervo tastes really good. Like maybe the first couple times you're doing it, maybe you're doing it with your lime or your lemon, and or maybe you're doing margaritas or whatever. And the end result is just explosive vomiting at some point, and then you're just like, oh, I'm never drinking that shit again. And somebody can open it from across the room, and you got to go throw up somewhere. That never happened to me, but that's the type of hangover that you would expect to not ever want to drink a Sierra Nevada Celebration again after the type of torment that it puts you through. But I kept drinking it. And so then in 2011, 2011 was a funky year. And my partner was going through a disgusting divorce, and he realized that alcohol was not going to help that situation at all. And so he quit in the beginning of October, and Celebration Ale came out, and I just decided, my drinking buddy has quit drinking, and I just can't get it up to deal with another season of Celebration hangovers. So I'm out too. And I just kind of snuck up on it. It wasn't like I'm going to quit on this date, shaky X's on the calendar or anything like that. I was like, well, I guess today's the day. I'm going to quit drinking. And I did. And it was, I'm not going to lie. I've tried to quit before. Even going back to Oakland, we would take what we call the AFC, the Alcohol-Free Challenge. And, at points throughout my life, I would take a month off. But it was always really, really hard to take a month off. People would admire me for it, and it felt good. It's like, oh yeah, I can't believe you could do that. And I take it as a compliment, but it's like really, to myself, it was like, God, I can't believe how hard this is. And it was just torture. I remember I did it one summer. I took like the month of May off or something like that, and it was just awful. And then I would take December off, because I've always suffered with depression, and like many people who suffer with depression, Christmas is the worst, and I still haven't really licked that one. That's a subject for another day, but it didn't really help. not having hangovers is always better than having hangovers, but I still, it didn't do what I was hoping it would do. All it did was make December torture. So basically, what it came down to, numerologically speaking, was 11/1/11, November 1st of 2011 was the first day I had with no hangover. I quit drinking really my last drink I had was like on October 30th, and then on Halloween I had a really nice last hangover, and then my first white knuckle day was on the 1st of November, and my crew chief wasn't the only guy who'd quit. My number one driver and friend, Steve Ryland, who drove across the country with me multiple times, and he had quit earlier. He'd had his own issues, and so there were 3 of us together, and so we could use each other for support. And it's so helpful to have support. If you don't have anybody to lean on, definitely consider AA, or there's lots of free resources out there for people who need to talk to somebody when they're quitting. And boy, I needed them. I don't think my crew chief needed them as much as I did. He had a more important job, so he couldn't like do the all day thing like I did every day. And yeah, the first, I don't want to say anything that's going to make it, I don't know. I want it to just be nothing but encouraging if people want to not drink. So I don't want to say it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And, I've worked with a lot of recovering alcoholics way before I even decided to quit. Being in the trades and being an artist and all that stuff. I knew lots of people who'd quit, and, they would tell you about how hard it was, and it was honestly kind of discouraging. Like, maybe if I hadn't had those people around, I would have quit earlier, which would probably have saved me some time and given me a little more joy in my life. But, okay, that said, the first year really was hard. I mean, they talk about the pink cloud, and some people get it, and some of my friends who quit, who are alcoholics, say they never got that. But like you'll just have these moments of joy, like I just got used to never wanting to eat breakfast. Like, keep that away from me when I was hungover. And hard drinking. I was just I'd go until I was starving halfway through the morning, and then eat an early lunch or whatever. But like I said, I didn't really get physically ill that often, but I just got used to working with this horrible hangover all the time. And just never made you want to eat breakfast. So I eat breakfast, and it's like, wow, this breakfast is the best breakfast ever. And you just, you get the pink cloud. It's like it's just like these feelings of joy, like just like finding the chocolate chip in the cookie of life. Like, wow, this is so great to be alive, and blah blah blah. And then, whoosh, down into the depths again. Like, oh. All I want is to have a freaking beer. Why did I quit? And then, it goes back and forth, and it's awful. It really is. I mean, it's thinking back on it for this, like 9 years in, I just don't care anymore. It never even occurs to me to want a beer or any kind of drink, But back then, like, it's just like, oh my God, I sure wish I could have a beer. So that went on for a year. After a while, it eased back a little bit. So the part that drove me the most crazy when I first quit was thinking about drinking all the time. Like, I quit, especially after a few months, I thought it was like Chinese water torture. Like, am I ever going to go through a day without thinking about, not even, after a while, it wasn't even so much about like, jonesing for a drink, but just like, I'm just sick of thinking about like, oh, today I'm a non-drinker, and like all these little tricks that you have to use to really get through the first hard parts. Or like, there's so many like these Alcoholic Anonymous things that they say to you that when you're not quitting drinking, or if you're a drinker, even worse, it's like one day at a time, easy does it, blah blah. All these things are like, they're just maddeningly true. Oh, you know, one step at a time, one day at a time. It's like, I'm so sick of thinking about drinking or not drinking every minute of every day, and that went away, thank God. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't know if anybody could deal with it, but that all went away, thank God. All right, well, what else? I'm trying to think of the positive things about quitting drinking. We all know it's hard. I like breakfast. The not having a hangover thing, you know, not having a hangover it's more than just like not having the hangover. Like there's like a almost a spiritual aspect to it, that like having a hangover, it's just for me, your experience may vary. For me, having a hangover meant, like, since I was so experienced that I would get up in the morning, and as soon as my eyes opened, I would know that the day was gonna suck, and that I was gonna feel just, you know, it wasn't like I was gonna get ill. I just felt like poisoned, and that I would have to get to a certain point in the day, you know, and I let myself drink all day, so I as soon as I felt like it, I could pop a beer, and if it was a really bad hangover, it wouldn't be as good as, like, if it was a mild hangover, you drink a beer and you feel great, normal. Drink another one, you still feel great and normal, and then, you know, a couple more, you know, as long as you're not ramming speed, you just kind of feel better until eventually you're drunk. But the longer that I was an alcoholic, and the more serious my hangovers were, like, the line just kept getting finer and finer, until it was like, you know, you just get up and you're all hungover and you drink beer, and then you just go directly to drunk, and just, it was a mess. And the part about it that was the worst, and I'm talking about good things, right? So I don't want to get too carried away, but like on occasions like drag racing or fishing, or, you know, hanging out with your buddies, you know, stuff that's fun, always involves, you know, when you're an alcoholic, always involves drinking too much. So the hangover is always the flip side to every coin, you know. It's like always all this drinking stuff, like, would lead to, you know, hangovers the wrong time. Like a perfect example is drag racing. Like, everybody who's a drinker and a drag racer, and there are many of us, hold on, I gotta get past this thing here. You end up drag racing with a hangover, which is horrible. Loud car, hot day, you're wearing your flame-proof suit, and you're under a lot of pressure, and it just can be awful. I don't have that anymore, and that's another, you know, that's just another great thing about not drinking anymore. I feel like I'm always there for my kids. No matter what time, day or night, you know, like, just let me know and I'll give you a ride. I can drive anywhere. We had a friend of mine had an incident where he just came a hair's breadth from getting a reckless child endangerment ticket, which is what happens if they bust you for driving around with your kids in the car when you're drunk. Can you imagine? A horrible sounding ticket. So I don't have to worry about those anymore. And just, I guess, I drank from the time I was 15 to the time I was 46, and that was enough of that. I'm thankful every day that I was able to put an end to it. And I really had my doubts about whether it was even possible, I guess. I mean, after quitting smoking, I knew anything was possible, but man, it is possible though. And I just want to encourage anyone who's thinking about it, give it a try. It's not as bad as you think, and it's not impossible, and yeah, I think it's a good thing. It definitely made my life better. And if there's ever anything I can do to help, let me know. Give me a call. Take care. See you next time.